Ian touched on there Scotland for a bit. Can they go to Paris and get a win? They did it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they did it a couple of years ago, and they seem to, throw, like, if the Scotland are a side that if you give them time and space, they're very dangerous and they grow in confidence. I think there's a little bit of resilience after increasing in this side. We've always spoke about them being inconsistent and producing performances, but last week they were pretty ruthless in that second half, and I think they'll fancy their chances going to Paris. I think France. Obviously, you've got to be tactically right, and you asked the question to Matt: Do Ireland win in Paris if that same game is? I think France will learn a lot from that game. I think tactically, they've been so strong at their kicking game and their pressure game, and when they get into the kind of scoring zones, absolutely ruthless. That's not to say they can't go the length of the field and score. They have that ability as well. But I just think they got a little bit frantic last week against Ireland and didn't play to their strengths. And, territorially, Ireland won that battle hands down. So France are going to be better. That's the bad news for Scotland. But if they get some sort of parity up front and get their set piece right, deliver good quality ball to their backline, I think they have players that can cause, and probably a game plan that can cause France some problems. But it's a big ask, isn't it? It's another step that Gregor Townsend will want to go, and you couldn't dismiss the notion of him going to Paris completely, but it's going to be very difficult.
Matt, we spoke 3 weeks ago, and to be fair to you, I'll give you your credit. You said there's a chance Scotland could go 3 from 3. And who knows, Matt Williams could be right.
There's a chance. Let's give the Scots credit. The second half was superb last week, and that was their challenge. They've never backed it up. Like, the stats were amazing. It's been 30 years since they've won the opening 2 games. Since '86, the week after they beat England, they've lost every game. The next game after they beat England since 1986. So the consistency has been the problem, but they answered it. I thought Finn Russell was quite superb in the second half. The first, let's also say the first half was ordinary, to say the least, but the second half was great. Now and Russell was superb. He got his hip square, his vision was great, his short kicking game was incredible, his passing game. He underplayed his hand while still producing some glimpses of brilliance. But the trouble with Russell was he forces his X factor sometimes. He has got an X factor, but that should just flow. And when you force it, it doesn't work. But I think the big thing with Scotland is the leadership under Ritchie, and the players are very much playing with a different mindset under Ritchie. I think he's a bit of a tough old character, and I don't mind that. I think when Stuart Hogg and the boys went out for a few beers after a game when they weren't supposed to, I think the rest of the team lost respect for them. And Ritchie's taken control, and they have a different attitude, and they're pushing it differently off the field and on the field. And I think that's really helped Finn Russell, because he might be getting a kick in the bum from his captain now, which isn't a bad thing. The interesting part was, of course, Russell plies his trade with Racing in France, so the French play him every week, know his strengths, know his weaknesses. But on the other side, Russell knows them as well. So I think it's going to be a really good game. Odds are stacked against Scotland for sure. There's no two ways about that. But this Scotland team have shown they're capable of really playing some good rugby against quality sides. So I think they're taking steps forward as a group, but this is going to be their biggest test for sure.
Yeah, it certainly is. Ian, if we touch on Finn Russell, what was his words after the game? I just did my job and made everyone else look good.
Yeah, it's a typical Finn Russell statement, but he's backing up what he's doing at the moment. And I think from someone who's played in an out half role, maybe obviously not as glamorous a player as he is, but his maturity that he's bringing to the game now, in comparison to last year, even 2 years ago, is really impressive. And obviously all the issues with Gregor Townsend have obviously been resolved, and whether that's been Gregor maybe, realizing that, Finn is a free spirit and Scotland will play better if he's able to dictate play and pick holes and pick gaps. Even if you look at a couple of the tries in that second half, the couple of crossfield kicks, his offload just close to the line. I mean, he is a massive threat. I think for that Scotland-France game, it has all the ingredients of being a really good game. And Quinny sort of touched on it, the steeliness with Scotland now. And I think Steve Tandy deserves a huge amount of credit, the Scottish defence coach. They just seem to have a bit of bite about them. Fagerson, even Ritchie Gray coming back after a few years of not playing international rugby has been so impressive. And it's almost like that they are a collective group and they're fighting for a bigger cause. I know there's been everything with Doddy Weir and whether they're playing for that as well as everything else, but they just seem a really tight-knit group. And with Finn Russell pulling the strings, they could pull off a big win against France. Why not? But I'm sure France or Scotland will not be thanking Ireland for beating France, because I'm sure they'll have the bit between the teeth and they'll be wanting to straighten out that record.